That is correct. Right here, we are here for you. It is Orange and Blue today. Cecil Lammey, Andrew Mason, live from Media Row at the Super Bowl. And Mace, we got news about the Broncos offensive coordinator. Not a surprise that Davis Webb is the guy the Broncos tasked to lead this offense going forward.
Tasked. The big question that is still yet unanswered is he going to be the play caller or not? That's what is not clear at this moment. What we do know is Davis Webb is the offensive coordinator, and Logan Kilgore, who has been the offensive quality control coach the last couple of years, a former CFL quarterback, is going to be the new quarterback coach, working with Bo Nix, although Davis Webb's still going to work with Bo Nix pretty extensively. So all that was resolved today, and the question now becomes, will Sean Payton hand over the reins? And if he does, to what degree would he hand over the reins of play calling? That is still TBD.
TBD as of right now. You're on Media Row there at the Super Bowl. One, this wasn't a shock. Two, we're just left to wait. And don't you think, if I'm going to guess, I'm going to say Davis Webb probably does some play calling this year. That's just a total guess right now, Mace. But our buddy Luca Evans said there's no language in the contract that pertains to that.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's part and parcel. That it's hard to kind of write that in there specifically to say, okay, you're going to get X amount, this, that, or the other. It's sort of like the old thing when the McDonald brothers sold their part of McDonald's to Ray Kroc, and a certain part of it had to be carried out on a handshake basis. This probably has to be carried out on a handshake basis as well. Anything in regards to him handling play calling. And that being said, I can't imagine that, given some of the interest that Davis Webb had from other teams, that him staying around doesn't include some kind of expansion of his role, stepping forward into at least being much more involved in the crafting of the game plan, and maybe having certain situations in which he is more directly involved in terms of what the play calls are, even if it isn't fully calling the plays on a full-time basis, just because the opportunities appear to have been there for him to call plays for somebody, and that's the next step that he has to take on his quest to become a head coach in all likelihood. It's, there aren't many Andy Reids that are going directly from being a position coach, even an accomplished position coach, to being a head coach. Even Nathaniel Hackett, he didn't call plays in Green Bay before he came to Denver, but he had called plays in Buffalo and in Jacksonville. So going without that play calling experience to being a head coach, which certainly is where Davis Webb would like to go, that's a stretch. So I can't imagine this is not happening without getting some deep involvement in play calling / offensive game plan.
Well, and if you're Davis Webb, what an incredible resource. You get to learn how to call plays in a game from Sean Payton while you're actively doing it. This isn't just some passive like, hey, I saw Sean do this and I have this idea. If it is allowed, Davis Webb gets to call plays with Sean Payton kind of on his shoulder, right? I see this as a healthy thing, and I think this is a great benefit for Davis Webb when his coaching career does continue.
It's just a question of how, if that's happening, how much Sean kind of lets Davis put his stamp on it, right? And not just what he learns, but does Davis Webb get to put some of his own ideas, his own flavor into things? Is it simply him learning from Sean Payton, or does he get to test drive some of his own ideas, things he's learned? Because he was learning things along the way before he got to Denver, before he worked with Sean Payton. This is a guy who would go into scouting meetings when he was with the New York Giants. He'd show up and go hang out with the personnel people on Fridays to learn things. He was picking up stuff that's going to help him now, even before he went from the playing side to the coaching side. So he isn't solely a product of this. And of course, to go all the way back, you go back to way back at Texas Tech, and he's around Cliff Kingsbury. So Davis Webb's got plenty of influences on him that go beyond just what he's picked up from Sean Payton the previous 3 seasons.
Yeah, Davis Webb has an incredible connection with Bo Nix as well. I'll sound like I'm in some sort of corporate meeting, because James in our chat room says synergy, right? Synergy between these three, and I like that, and I am emotional and opinionated, Mace, so strike this down if you must. But I get a little young Shanahan Elway vibe here. And it may not be together that long as Shanahan and Elway were. Of course, Shanahan had to go away as a head coach and then come back as the head coach. But you just like having this type of guy on your side, a guy that knows you.
Yeah. And I mean, let's see, how old was Mike when he got to work with John for the first time? So Mike was, I believe Mike was 32 his first season with John Elway, because Mike was born in 1952, and then he came aboard for the 1984 season. So Davis was a little bit younger. Davis was 28 years old for his first season with Bo Nix. He just turned 31. So he's doing things at a little bit younger level, but still he's right there. He's right there in the ballpark. He's not too far off Mike Shanahan age-wise. You're talking early to mid-30s. It's not, so you can kind of make the comparison, and like I said, some different a collection of influences, because while Mike Shanahan eventually got exposure to the Bill Walsh offense through his time in San Francisco, he'll also tell you that he had plenty of influences in those early years before he came to Denver, from whom he learned. He'll tell you about how he learned about relating to players from Barry Switzer, for example. He'll tell you he learned a lot about kind of organization and bringing an operation together from Charlie Pell at Florida, under whom he worked for 5 seasons before he came to Denver. So the Mike Shanahan you eventually got, who should be in the Hall of Fame, was a product of all the influences coming together, and as we see, continues to influence and continues to have his tentacles and his tree spread even further, because now you have another branch from one of his branches, because Mike LaFleur is a branch. Mike LaFleur didn't work directly for Mike Shanahan, but of course he worked for and with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and now he gets a shot. So the Shanahan tree continues to branch out, and with Davis Webb, we'll get another branch on the Sean Payton tree at some point as well, in all likelihood.
Yeah, and I think with the Davis Webb thing, Mace, it's many things. It is history. And by the way, I read Think Like a Champion every single year on this shelf here somewhere over there. But like Mike Shanahan's book that Adam Schefter wrote, I read it every single year. I love Mike Shanahan. But it's that youth and Davis Webb in a different world or timeline could still be playing football as a backup somewhere. So I think having that connectivity of like close enough in age, he did the similar things to Bo Nix, Bo on a higher scale, of course, but like it's like how you and I have great chemistry, because I can drop the Three's Company reference and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some people don't, maybe many people don't, but like we'll talk
Yeah.
Star Wars, we'll talk Mr. Roper, like whatever. And I just think that kind of connectivity that you see with Davis and Bo, shared moment, happened because of that like similar experience. And not that long ago, when we were at an All-Star game watching Davis Webb perform.
Exactly. And Davis Webb went through the same All-Star game experience as Bo Nix. They both went through the Senior Bowl experience. They both went, I mean, shoot, go back to the college ranks. They both went through the experience of being highly touted in the high school ranks. They even both went through the experience of transferring, because Davis Webb started at Texas Tech and he moved on to Cal, and Bo Nix, of course, started at Auburn and went on to Oregon. So you have two guys that there are a great deal of commonalities in their paths. And the other thing that, of course, is interesting is that both of them are working with Sean Payton, and the QB coach serves as a buffer. And we actually saw this, to go way back to Mike Shanahan. Gary Kubiak, as offensive coordinator working hand in hand with the quarterbacks, Kubes could be that buffer between Mike and the quarterback. And I think especially back to when Jake Plummer was the Broncos quarterback, and Kubes was essential for making that relationship work, because sometimes Mike could be high-strung and driven, and we know, I mean, Jake was driven too, but Jake had a different type of personality than Mike. Jake is a little more laid back, goes with the flow, and one of Gary Kubiak's gifts is being able to calm the waters. And Davis Webb certainly has the ability that gift and that ability to be a buffer as well. I mean, actually, it was obviously with a different quarterback, but just recall that moment in 2023 on the Lions sideline when Sean is yelling at Russell Wilson, who's the guy who's kind of the buffer, kind of trying to kind of calm things down, make peace. I mean, when Russ is just kind of standing there with the vacant stare almost, who's the buffer? It's Davis Webb.
Right.
And
when Sean and Bo are yelling at each
essential.
other in the Raiders game, it's Davis Webb who
Yep.
kind of comes over and leads things away. And you and
Yep.
I think you and I both have a healthy appreciation for Dan Reeves. But I think years ago, Mike Shanahan was the buffer between Sean Elway and Dan Reeves.
And when did things really get sideways between John and Dan? Yeah, and in fact, Dan fired Mike, because Mike came back after the Raiders fired him, and then Dan fired Mike heading into 1992, and then that was really when the bleep hit the fan in the 92 season.
Yeah.
And then after that year was when Dan got fired, and then Mike wasn't coming back, at least not immediately, and that was a lot on Mike, because Mike, rightfully so, I think he basically said he didn't want to be the aloha who pushed Dan out. And they brought it, and then Wade Phillips was promoted, but then, fortunately for John, they were able to bring in the late Jim Fossil, who was able to do in those 2 years a lot of the things that Mike would have done as well to launch John Elway for an extraordinarily successful final 6 years of his career. You look at John starting from 1993. That was the rocket. The rocket went in the air in '93 for Elway in terms of him finally being able to have production that matched the ability that everybody knew that he had, getting in an offense that worked for him, and then And then Mike came back in 95 and took it to another level entirely.
Yeah, next level stuff right there. It is Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason from Media Row at the Super Bowl. Mason's got a tight schedule tonight, so I'm going to play this quick commercial from our sponsor, and then I've got maybe a pie in the sky question for you, Mason.
Okay.
That after this.
At Ramos Law, they believe in building long-term relationships with their clients. It's never just a transaction. Their motto says it best. Ramos Law. What makes us different makes us better. And it's so true. Ramos Law, uniquely built to fight for you.
To do this to you, Mace, because Davis Webb just got the promotion, but is it too pie in the sky to think maybe he stays under Sean Payton until he takes over from Sean Payton as head coach?
I mean, it's not. I think that would depend on how long Sean is there. Depend that timeline. And if Sean is there several years, probably not.
Right.
You and I talked about, though, and you brought it up, that tweet that pointed out how few coaches get their Super Bowl win, their first Super Bowl win with a team after the 5th year on the job.
Right.
That if it happens, typically it happens in years 1 through 5. And the very interesting thing about Sean Payton's 5th year with the Broncos is that it would be Bo Nix's contract year. And so if you get through year 5 and it hasn't happened, things do start to get interesting in terms of where the Broncos are. Like let's say they get the next couple of years, let's say the Broncos keep winning, but they don't get back to the Super Bowl. And it's possible.
Right.
What if this past year was the closest they came? Just kind of like with, for example, the Buffalo Bills, the closest they came was, then they matched this again, but it turned out the closest they came to the Super Bowl was 2020, losing the AFC Championship game. They got back there, of course, in 24, but they never got closer than that, as it turned out. If you look a couple of years later, after Sean Payton's 5th year, Bo Nix's 4th year, and the Broncos haven't gotten beyond that, the sentiment, the feeling of how the rebuilding project has gone, it starts to look a little bit different. And all of a sudden, you're not saying, oh, Sean Payton's definitely the coach until he's 70, right? I mean, then right. You start saying that the heat starts to crank up, is what I'm saying, if the Broncos don't at least get to the Super Bowl in the next couple of years. I mean, it sounds crazy to say this right now, because you've seen the incline from 5-12 to 8-9, 10-7, 14-3. But if you look over the horizon, that's just how this thing works. If a couple of years from now the Broncos have not advanced a step farther than they have, there will start to be some uncomfortable sentiments and some uncomfortable conversations being had. And so and as we saw in Buffalo with Joe Brady replacing Sean McDermott,
right.
If things are working between the player and the offensive coordinator, it may be a matter of saying, well, maybe the change that needs to be made is the head coaching voice, but not the offensive voice.
Right.
So that's what I mean. There's that sort of scenario as well. What I'm saying is, it may not just be, the Broncos win it all right off into the sunset and then the reins are handed off. It's possible that you could be talking 2 or 3 years from now that the Broncos didn't get it over the hump and you have a transition that looks like Buffalo. I mean, that's that's in play as well. You just never know. But it's something that you have to consider because we just saw what happened in Buffalo. And even though John Harbaugh had the Super Bowl back in the 2012 season with the Ravens, make no mistake, he's being let go because this Ravens era with Lamar Jackson stalled and didn't get past the AFC Championship game either. Effectively, like he had multiple Ravens eras. He got blown out because this Ravens era had the same ceiling and lack of success as the Bills' Josh Allen era. Whereas someone like Zach Taylor, and again, and it's the Bengals, so take it with a grain of salt, Zach Taylor hangs on a little more longer because the Bengals did nudge their way to the Super Bowl once, which is something that McDermott couldn't say, and something that John Harbaugh couldn't say, at least with this two-time MVP as his quarterback.
Right, and I went ahead and pulled up the tweet, Mace, so folks can look at it. Pause it if you need to on YouTube. But the 36 coaches that won a Super Bowl, of the 32 that were hired after the start of the Super Bowl era, the breakdown of what year they on the job when they won their first title.
Yep.
Year 5 is it, because after year 5, 1 in year 6, 1 in year 7, 1 in year 8, 1 in year 14.
That's Bill Cowher, was year 14 that he got over the hump. He at least had been to a Super Bowl before then. Year 7, by the way, was Andy Reid with Kansas City. Year 6 was Chuck Noll with Pittsburgh, so it's very interesting. Two of the four are from arguably the most patient organization in the sport, although it's easy to be patient when, in the case of Bill Cowher, he did win a lot of games, and he did get him to the Super Bowl in year 4 on the job, so he did something to justify that patience too.
That was the Neil O'Donnell 3 interception game in what?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as painful as it is, we haven't been able to talk about this even off air, Mace, but they lost Jim Leonard, and that's bizarre. But they kept Davis Webb.
Yeah.
And they kept Vance Joseph. You know what I mean? So, like, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. It'd be nice if you could forever and ever and ever. But if you kept Vance Joseph, if you told me before these hires, if you said, hey, BJ's going to be here and Davis Webb's going to be here, but you're going to lose Jim Leonard, I would say that sucks, but I'm okay.
As Meatloaf sang many decades ago, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Praying for the end of time.
Different song.
I know, but now you got me going over Meatloaf's greatest hits. That's what we can do. See, we can have a Meatloaf reference, and we understand what it is.
Yes. That's again another reference that is relevant to fewer and fewer people with every passing year.
Yes.
Sadly.
I know. But Mace, I know you got you're a busy man. You got a lot to do. So how about we do our YouTube thing and we get you out of here so you can get on to media night.
Yep. First the Patriots, then the Seahawks. But boy, it's sad. Look. If the Broncos had won, you'd be right here. Like, we would be doing this together. I know. Sad, man.
I feel like William Shatner, right? Con.
Just eat the ball, Stiddy. Just eat the ball.
All right, Mace, before we're out of here, folks, we need your help on YouTube. We got massive goals this year on YouTube, so tell a friend, do everything. But how can folks help us out specifically on our YouTube channel?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell.
So that you
never miss a bit.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty, baby.